if you have to step out early or share it with a friend, you can do that. So I normally don't like to do PowerPoints, but I'm going to do one today, mostly because there's kind of a lot of backstory I think that needs to be said here so everybody understands the point and purpose of this software. I'm going to compare it to the current Exchange integration solution, which has been around for many years, called Exchange Link. And then I'm also going to compare it to the Desktop Integration Manager, which is the client-side piece. So Sync for Exchange is still in beta, and anybody that's interested in testing it and kicking the tires on it can absolutely do that. So if you want to sign up for the beta, just send us an email, and we'll send you the form to fill out to sign up to download the software and play with it in a dev environment if you want. They just encourage you not to put it into production yet. I suppose you could. I just don't know if I would want to do that yet until it's all fleshed out. But you are welcome to try it. I also don't have pricing yet. Normally I would like to know those kinds of things, but Infor hasn't released pricing yet. I suspect that if you are a current Exchange Link user, you'll probably comp this new version, but I don't know that. As soon as we get pricing information, we'll post it up on our website, though. Okay, so what in the heck is it? So it is Sync for Exchange, as it says, and it is a server-to-server connection between the Infor CRM database and your Exchange servers database. And the method which it connects, which is much more modern than Exchange Link, is it is connecting through SData, which is Infor's web services engine, and then it's using the web services component in Exchange Server on the other side. So the two of them are talking to each other and passing data all through SData. And what does it sync? Well, it syncs emails, and this is new and exciting because Exchange Link didn't have that. So it's going to synchronize emails for any email box for any of your Infor CRM users that are set up to do that, and I'm going to show you that as we get into it here. So it has the ability to look for a contact matching email in the CRM system, and then it'll automatically create a history record by copying the contents of that email into the matching contacts history tab, all automatically, all happening in the background without you having to push any buttons to get it to do it. And it syncs contacts based on your Infor CRM Sync group. Those of you that are using the desktop integration Outlook Sync today, you know to get contacts to sync, you have to create an ad hoc group, and you tell Infor CRM which ad hoc group you want to synchronize with your Outlook contacts or Exchange contacts. That is also honored through the Sync for Exchange. It looks for records in that group, and then it also looks for if you created the contact in Outlook or OWA or whatever Outlook client or Exchange client you're using, as long as the category is set to the same name as the sync group, then a net new contact you created in Exchange is going to sync to Infor CRM through this mechanism. So it's not all or nothing. I guess that's the point of it all. Then, of course, it syncs calendars, and that's huge because now, regardless of what device, whether it is an iPhone or an Android or a tablet or a Mac computer or who cares, as long as that device is using your Exchange account, then all of the calendar items that you create in Exchange and or create in Infor CRM are going to synchronize to the other. And there's some options we can set there, which we'll talk about as well. And then tasks, which are tasks or to-dos, those can sync also. And the upside to Sync for Exchange, as I mentioned, it is email client agnostic. It doesn't care because it doesn't use any email client to do any of this integration. It is all happening under the hood, behind the scenes, at the server level, using the web services and S data capabilities of these two packages. So now, if we contrast that to the old Exchange Link, that too was a server-to-server, but it was connecting through a direct database-to-database connection. So it would only work with an on-premise Exchange server, and using a ODBC connection would read and write to the database directly, and it would have to then connect to the Infor CRM, formerly Saleslogix, database directly. It also did not do anything with emails. It was strictly a contact, calendar, and task syncer thing, if that's a word. But again, you know, it didn't care what email client originated the data. It would synchronize those three items, but not email. Okay, then how does it compare to the Desktop Integration Manager? Well, that is an Outlook Windows-only client or add-in that is connecting to the Infor CRM database through SData. So the desktop client integration only worked with the Windows-based, full-blown Outlook client. So you had to be using that, which means for you Mac users, you had to be running VMware or Parallels or something and run a Windows session and buy Outlook for Windows, and then you could have, you know, any kind of integration. So that's great because the business world is still predominantly PCs. So if you have Outlook today, you can have a client-side integration, which is packaged with the core software. Now, the desktop integration does sync emails and creates history records from emails, but it's manual. So you have to pick and choose by highlighting the email in your inbox or your send. You have to push the Send SLX button, or highlight an an email in your inbox and click the Record to History button. So you had to remember to do that for every single email that came and went from your email. That's the way it is today. It's not automatic. You have to push the button to get emails to go into history, and it does sync calendars, contacts, and tasks like the other three solutions did. Now that's not going away. Exchange Link is going away and being replaced by Exchange Sync. The Desktop Integration Manager, for those of you who either don't have Exchange Server or choose to deploy the client-side integration, that is still going to be an option for the foreseeable future. It's just an either-or, and the documentation says you can't run both at the same time. So you do have to choose one of the two integration methods. Okay, what does it require? As we mentioned, it is 8.2 and later only. So you would have to be at least on the 8.2 level, and your Microsoft Exchange has to be up and running and configured, and it's compatible with Server 2010 or later. And here's what's really cool is it works with hosted Exchange servers, including Office 365, which is what I'm going to be showing you today. What do you have to do to get it to work on Exchange? You would have to make sure that the EWS or Exchange Web Services is turned on and configured on your Exchange server. And you have to have Auto Discover service turned on. And Auto Discover means that all I have to do is to search for my Exchange server that's hosting my email, is put my email in, and it will go find the server in the world of the internet for me and say, oh, okay, Scott, I found you. I found where your Exchange server is. And so that's a pretty nice setup feature that you'd have to have turned on. And again, everything I just talked about is all standard with Exchange 2010 and above. You just have to turn it on if it's not on. Now, here's one thing that's important to note, is that they have a user called the service user. The service user is used to connect to the Exchange server from CRM now, and must have impersonation rights for every mailbox that's going to be syncing with CRM. So what it doesn't mean is that it doesn't mean that every one of your users has to establish a personal connection to Infor CRM and to Exchange. All of the sync traffic for everything that's moving back and forth between these two platforms is happening using one service user on the system. So I think that's a great method for doing that. I wasn't exactly sure how to set that up with my Office 365, but I was able to figure out pretty quickly and able to add this impersonation capability to the service user we had, and then everything started working just fine. So it didn't seem like a big deal to me. What are the limitations? It's only available on Infor CRM web or cloud and Windows host database environment. So any on-premise or any cloud-based system, what it doesn't work with is remote offline clients, offline web clients, or remote office clients. There's not a whole lot of users left out there that are using that method, so I don't think that's a big showstopper for most of you. Infor CRM Sync for Exchange is not compatible with Exchange Link, which I mentioned earlier, or the desktop Outlook Sync, and they recommend you choose one of these and turn the other one off. Now, I haven't tried leaving it on. I don't know what would happen if it did. I would imagine you get a lot of duplicate records floating around, so they're just encouraging you to choose an integration solution and stick with that for your whole deployment. Okay, how do you install this thing? Now, the documentation that comes with it, yes, it's about 20, 30 pages, but in a nutshell, it was pretty easy to install. There was a series of about 5 bundles you put in sequence. You do your website build and deploy, and that worked without a hitch for me. They want you to test S-Data, but to be honest, if you're using Infor today, you're already using S-Data because there's a bunch of other stuff that's already powered by S-Data. So they just have you verify S-Data is working. And then you configure the S-Data Sync Supervisor job, which I'll show you. And that's the job that is being fired off by the job manager on a schedule that you set. And that's what's actually doing the syncing at whatever interval you set. Now, you only have to have that if you're going to be syncing contacts or calendars. You don't have to turn that particular S-Data Sync Supervisor job on if you're just using it to sync emails, because that's a separate service that's doing that. Next, you would configure the Exchange service user, this impersonation user we were talking about earlier. You would add your Infor CRM Sync users, anybody that you have as a user in the system that wants to use the sync, you would activate that. And then there's some resource settings, such as, is it a one-way sync or a two-way sync? And if it's one-way, is it Exchange to Infor only or Infor to Exchange only? So those are just a couple of configuration choices you get to make as you're going through this. So, and I'll jump in here to show you, well, what does it really look like? Okay, so the first thing that I did here, now that we're in Infor CRM, is I went in and set up my sync group for contacts. So I created an ad hoc group, picked my favorite customers, created a group called Sync Infor for Exchange, and added that to my sync group. So this is the group of contact records that it's going to honor when it's doing its synchronization. So you don't want to sync every contact into Exchange, so you can tell it, I only want the ones that I pick, and that's anybody that's in that particular group. So that's an easy step. So now if we look at the integration panel itself, I'm logged in as the administrator, which gives me access to these admin functions over on the nav bar on the left. And in this particular one, we're looking at the Exchange Sync setup. So you'll notice we've got Gmail Sync. There's a similar integration for Gmail, Google, and then X3 for ERP integration. And in this one, though, we're using Exchange Sync. That's what we're looking at now. So what I had to do was I had to tell it, well, what is the name of the Exchange service user that I set up to impersonate, which impersonate means this S-Weber user now on Exchange has the rights to schedule calendar items and tasks for all of the other users on that box. That's the significance of this. So that one is a super user that has access to everybody's calendar and everybody's tasks and contacts, because that's the user that's going to power the login and integration through web services. So once I put that service user in, after having set him up, then I put in the password and I verified the connection, and it comes back and says, hey, successful, and I save my changes. So now I have to pick and choose, well, what parts of the Exchange Sync do you want to turn on? So right now I've enabled the calendar sync, and I have it set up to be a two-way sync. I didn't turn on contacts or tasks, but all you have to do is check the box and turn it on. Now, what you may notice is this is global. This is not Scott only wants calendar and Bree wants tasks and calendars. So I don't like that necessarily. Again, this is a system parameter rather than a user parameter. So depending on how you set this up, everybody inherits these settings is how this works. So if we look at the calendar sync, this is where you can tell the system one-way versus two-way. I don't know why you would only do it one-way. Two-way makes sense to me. And then you have some conflict resolution if in the middle of a sync cycle, both systems got updated, which I'm not quite sure in a real world how that would happen. So you updated the same item in Outlook, and then you went and edited it in Infor, and then the sync ran. It's going to go, okay, well, who wins here? You made a change in both systems to the same calendar item. Which one is the keeper? You can just pick and choose that. Probably makes sense to say whatever the last one was I modified it in, that's the winner, but that makes sense. Okay, and it's enabled because it's checked. So you can do the same things with tasks and contacts. And now we would set up the users themselves. So I set myself up with my email address on Office 365 for a user named Lee Hogan in this demo system. So all I did was added them to the system, and then it asks me to verify that user. So it verifies that their email is valid on that Exchange box, and it again is going to say, yep, you're in, and now that user is syncing as well. So they're part of the sync group. So not every user has to be part of the sync, but as I mentioned, every user is sharing the same settings over here on the Resources tab. Okay, so now if we look at one more thing here, and that is the Job Manager. The Job Manager is the back-end workhorse service that's running on your server that's actually doing these things you've just told it to do. And so you can come in here to see the execution. In other words, you can see that the email job, which is copying the emails, has been firing over and over again here. You can see that it's successful, and it only took 1 second or 3 seconds to do that. And if it fails, it does show a fail in here. Something went wrong with the connection. So then if we look at the definitions of what the Job Manager is being asked to do, you're going to see the S Data Sync Supervisor job. That's the one that copies contacts, calendars, and tasks between the two systems. And then the email one is a separate job. So email's handled with its own job. Everything else is handled by this S Data Supervisor job. And so, like I told you, you schedule these to run. So these are all the jobs I have in the system. Those two I just showed you are related to Exchange Sync. And then if you go to schedules, you get to see, well, which ones are scheduled to fire. And so you will see that the SData Sync supervisor job, currently I have it off, but the email exchange job has fired 26 times since I started the system today, and it just fired an hour or two ago. So that's what you see happening here. Now, you can edit these schedules. Oops. So let's pick one here. I got too many selected. And you can add brand new schedules too. So you can have more than one schedule for any one job running. So right now the email copy job that's running is set to every 10 minutes. But you can set it to run right now if you're like doing some testing, or here's the interval that you can pick from. This is a downside to the sync engine in general, is it's not happening in real time. But you can set the interval at which it syncs for both the calendar stuff and the email stuff to 1 minute. That's pretty short. And so you can also pick a date and time that you want it to stop syncing, otherwise it's going to keep going every minute of every day indefinitely using this little setup window. So those are your options as far as how often you want it to do its sync thing. All right, well, Bree, that is everything I was hoping to show today. Is there any questions that have come in?
Hi, Scott. Yes, we do have a few questions here to start out with. And the first one is the calendar sync all or nothing? Or is there a way to sync only certain calendar items, such as something associated with a customer record as opposed to all calendar items like personal appointments?
It is all, it's all or nothing. So unfortunately the answer is everything syncs. So here I am in my Outlook 365, and here's a calendar item that's synchronized over from Infor, and you'll notice that it puts in the name of the account and contact, and if they have a phone number, it'll put that in here as well, which is really nice, by the way, that it says, you see, in Outlook and Exchange, there's no concept around an appointment is with a person. Appointments in Outlook are with you, the user, but that's not true in CRM. So CRM says, okay, Scott, you do have an appointment on Monday, and it is with Rita, and here's her account and phone number. But unfortunately, there is no filter yet. They may have that in a new build, and it actually is a new build that came out that I didn't have time to install. It may have some filters for you. I would at least like to see private items in Outlook blocked from syncing into Infor. I think that's kind of a no-brainer, but I haven't seen how to do that yet. But I'm hoping they add that functionality. But in this beta build that I have, there's no filters.
All right. Our next question is it possible to run both desktop integration and Exchange Sync? Sometimes we file an email in a seemingly wrong place, and we would want the email recorded under the history of an account, even though a contact at that account was not in the email list.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I'm actually not sure either why the implementation guide says you must turn off the desktop sync. I can't think of a reason why you have to. I don't know if the two are incompatible in some way. So the only answer I have is Infor says you cannot run them both at the same time. But I'm not sure what the problem would be, if there was a problem, if you did. So I may try that here and see if it messes something up. Because I agree that there are certain times where, some email I'd want, saved to some other record other than the person who sent it to me, right? Everybody does that, but I don't know how to do that today.
All right. Our next question, it's a little long to begin with, but we'll see if you can make some sense of it. In my current Outlook Sync deployment, I have 4 to 5 users who sync time out and will not sync. This has nothing to do with them, their client-side setup, or anything else. It's specific to something in the database that messes with their sync. I've removed their network options as well as web options, but it still times out. Will I run into the same kind of issues with this software since it seems to connect in the same way?
You know, I sure can't answer that. I'd say it's outside of the scope of what we can deal with on today's demo, but I would certainly reach out to your business partner if you haven't, and if we are your business partner, please reach out to us and we'll try to help you troubleshoot that. But I can't answer that today.
All right. Our next question is, when using Sync for Exchange, how do you deal with errors, things that did not sync that you wanted synced, etc.?
Good question. It does alert you here. If you're the admin user, it does give you these little informational reports, and it does tell you if any of this stuff failed. So you'll see this little information thing popping up and warning you that a sync job failed. Now, I haven't had it fail on me, so I'm not exactly sure what information I'm going to get. And you'll also see under the job manager executions that if something failed, it does say failed over here, and I think it does give you some information, but I'm not positive on that either. I'm not sure what else you would get if it failed.
Okay. Our next question is it supported in both LAN and web clients?
Well, no. This is a web application. There's none of the setup stuff that we were looking at here today is available in the LAN. But here's what I would say. You have to deploy the web client anyway with the newer versions of Infor CRM, because even a lot of the LAN components and the current XBAR and mobile and things like that, they all require you to deploy the whole web suite of stuff anyway. So here would be my opinion. You could go into the web client, even though you're a LAN user, let's say, and you could do all the setup you saw me do today. Then you can shut the web client off and go into the LAN. And the reason it doesn't matter is this is not a client-side integration. It's a server-side integration. So it's irrelevant which Infor CRM client your users are using, because it's not interacting with the client. It's interacting with the servers. So the answer is it will work with the LAN, but you would still have to do all the setup that you saw me do today in the web to get it all up and running and configured. Then you could shut the web off and never log in again if you don't want to, and use your LAN.
All right. Our next question is, Outlook Sync requires triggers in the database that move information around for the contacts and account tables. These triggers are a pain in the neck. Will this integration require those triggers as well, or will I finally be able to disable them?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know the answer. We'll have to take that offline. I haven't dug into what happens with triggers when this thing is turned on, but I suspect that might be the reason why they don't want you to have the current Outlook Sync running with this Exchange Sync, because it may have something to do with those triggers. You might be onto something.
All right. Our next question is, I'm running a web server and an app server for a web configuration. Would you install this to run from the app server?
Install what? Well, let me take a shot at that if I understood the question. The job manager service is running on whatever server you installed it on today. Exchange Sync is just more jobs that the job manager is running. It's not a brand new, net new component that you're installing. So whatever server you put it on when your implementation was, when you installed, that's where the rest of these jobs are going to reside.
All right. Our next question is, Are there any tools to prevent databases from growing huge, and can you prevent internal emails from coworker to coworker?
Well, I'll take the second one. There is no filters right now. I think that would be a great idea because we, just thinking of our own company, we have a tremendous amount of inter-office email chatter that's going on throughout the day. And because we're all contacts with our email addresses in the CRM system, you're right. That thing is going to start to fill up with all of our internal stuff. I would love to see a filter or an exception table maybe of some kind. The obvious answer would be don't put your email address on your contact record in your CRM system, and then none of those will show up in there. That might not be what you're looking for, but that would be a simple solution. But today there are no filters. As far as warnings about the database getting too big, that would be some SQL monitoring thing. It really wouldn't be related to Infor CRM, which is sitting on top of a SQL database. So I'm no SQL expert, not even close, but my sense is there's probably some tool available, either out of the box or an add-on to SQL, that would monitor it and say, hey, you've got a table that's getting bigger than you want it to be, and I'm letting you know. I'm sure there's something out there, I just don't know what that is.
All right. Our next question is, can you customize a template for what info is actually included in the appointment?
Great question. I asked that same thing, and I didn't get an answer yet, but I'm going to find out because, I see their name and their phone, and what I was thinking is, wouldn't it be cool if their address was in here so you could click on it on your mobile phone and it would open the map, right? And I'd love to see stuff like that in here. So I don't know if the code that's populating the notes area for these sync things is available to us. I'll find that out, though, because I want to know the answer to that, too. And the other thing I thought that would be really cool is, we're looking at this and we see Rita, Coyle, whatever. I would love it if that was a hyperlink that I could click on Rita's name, and that hyperlink would actually open her contact record in CRM. That's definitely on my wish list of something I think would be just really cool. I can't imagine why you couldn't do that because Outlook does support hyperlinked text. So I'll find out whether you can do that or not because I would like to know.
All right. Our next question is wondering if we can look at the Infor CRM calendar as well.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So you want to see if it's actually syncing, right? I didn't want to have to go there.
They want proof, Scott. They want proof.
They want proof. You want to believe me. Where was I here? So we'll go to here. And so let's just go to the week view and choose this week. Okay, so here's the proof. You got two meetings on Monday, one on Wednesday, and one on Thursday. Now, we're in Infor CRM's calendar now. And what do we have? Oh, same thing, 2 on Monday, 1 on Wednesday, 1 on Thursday. So that's what they look like. So yeah, these are all synchronizing. Like one of them I created in Infor, and one of them I created on Office 365 just to make sure it was all syncing around, and it was.
All right. Our next question, Scott, is there a best practice on sync, whether it be two-way Saleslogix to Outlook or Outlook to Saleslogix?
Well, I don't know why you wouldn't want it two-way, to be honest with you, because it seems to me all the users that I get to talk to, they use both. I mean, they use Outlook, and they might be on their mobile phone, and they might create an appointment in there or a tablet or whatever, and I would want that to show up, in Infor and vice versa. So personally, I see no downside to turning it on as a two-way. Now, the exception would be, though, well, maybe I do have a bunch of like personal stuff in Outlook, and I really don't want that showing up in Infor. And until they have a filter mechanism you might only want it to be one way. But like I said, I love the fact that two-way seems to be best practice.
All right. Our next question is, I would want some emails associated with opportunities or tickets. Will Exchange Sync be able to differentiate these cases?
Right now, no. And that is another great suggestion because it makes sense to me. It does do it for tickets today, because when you send an email from a ticket, it does embed a ticket ID, and then when when they reply to that, and it comes back in your inbox. With the current desktop integration manager, it reads that ticket ID and adds that to the activities of a ticket. But it doesn't do it for opportunities. I don't know why. It certainly could. So I see that part of this is missing. I am disappointed that that's not in here. And maybe it is and I don't know about it, but that's another great takeaway that I'll find the answer to, is that, so if it's an email related to an opportunity, like this one is, it's related to phase 3, and so if we look at that same one here in Outlook, it has the opportunity. In fact, let's open it up here. But I know we're talking about email. So you can see that Outlook knows about its opportunity phase 3 for Abbott, but is it going to then record an email that I received that was a reply that had that in there to the opportunity? I didn't see it doing that today. I didn't see that happening, so I'm going to say no, but that's definitely on the wish list, and I hope they put that in there.
All right. Our next questions, and I received this from a couple people, so I'll put them all together, is how does it handle email attachments? And does it log the attachments with emails? And is there any size limitations to those attachments?
Another one I don't know the answer to. That's another great question. I'm going to have to do some research on that too, because I haven't tested emails with attachments to see what it's doing with them. So I'm going to have to ask to take that offline as well, but I will test it to be sure. It makes sense to me that it would save the attachment to the attachment tab, because that's what the desktop integration manager is doing today. That's just something I didn't test yet, but I should, and I will do it.
All right. And I believe you answered this earlier, Scott, but just in case for anybody who didn't hear it, is there a filter mechanism to filter out personal contacts?
Not that I know of. I haven't found it or seen it in any of the documentation. There is something that kind of intrigued me in here that was called parameters, but the documentation doesn't talk about the parameters and doesn't say under what circumstances parameters come into play. So I don't know, what else you could do. So here's one, like only go back 90 days when you're syncing activities. Now that's a filter, right? So to me that says this thing is honoring some kind of a filter table, because there was a filter in here out of the box that says, when I turn this thing on, don't give me 5 years worth of Outlook history. Only give me the last 90 days. But I didn't set that. I didn't put it here. It's not editable. Oh, sorry, it is editable. I clicked on it. But I don't know how to add more of these optional parameters. They're obviously thinking about it, but it's just not all in this beta yet. So my hope is they're going to have things like, skip personal activities and things like that would be great.
All right. The next question is, I think this is more of just kind of what do you think, Scott, is it seems strange that the do not update text in this section uses descriptions and not unique keys. Do you know what this is referring to, Scott?
Well, yeah. I think what you're saying is kind of what I was saying too, that I wish they did, was that if you're pasting in the name of an account, why not just paste in the URL of that account in the Infor CRM web system? You could, I just don't know why they didn't. In fact, we tested it in-house and verified that it does work if you embed a hyperlink to a specific Infor CRM account or contact in the notes of an Outlook email. It works. They're just not doing it for some reason. I would love it if they did. So we need to find out if we can make that work the way I would like it to.
All right. Our next question is, where do you go in Outlook, or Infor, to view the emails that were synced, or would you just read them in Outlook?
Well, you know, they're going to show up as history records under your accounts and contacts and leads. So yeah, all those emails get copied into the history tab, just like they do today with your desktop integration manager thing. So they show up in here just like this, like as an email. Now,
right.
if you wanted to see them all, you could definitely build a group, a contact group that says, show me all the contacts that had an email synced into them today. You know, you could definitely build a group like that and then see a list of those records, because it's just a history record.
All right, Scott. Our last question, and I saved it for last because it's a little off topic, but I think we get this almost every month, is do we know of any future plans for the on-premise version of Infor CRM?
Well, on-premise, I mean, you can deploy it on-premise today and for the foreseeable future. You know, they have the cloud option, which is definitely attractive and is gaining a lot of traction. But so I'm wondering if maybe you're asking about the LAN version of on-premise, because you can deploy the web version.
I believe it's more of a, in general, have we heard any information about Infor's plan for the LAN version?
For the LAN version? Okay. I have not. I haven't heard anything since the summit they had almost a year ago now, that they had come out and said, we promise we're going to support it for at least 2 more years. Well, that was a year ago, and I've heard nothing since then. And so I don't know the answer to that either. I am going to be at the new summit in San Diego in September, and so hopefully I'll learn more about the roadmap here, and we'll blog about that. So don't know yet. Hope to know more in about a month.
All right, Scott. Well, that is it for our questions.
Well, great. Thank you, everybody. We